Yes, team. How the devil are we? Welcome back. Episode number 46 with my brother from another mother, Akos, and myself talking all things art of performance. And in today's episode, we're going to be diving deep into a trend that is going crazy across the UK, across the world. And it's normally being popularized by huge podcasts. You may have heard of Joe Rogan talk about this. You may have heard of a number of MMA, UFC fighters talk about this substance. And you also may have heard a number of everyday recreational users talk about this promising supplement that has been branded as an incredible resource for everybody to have, or something that should be tailored in their arsenal if they're suffering with things like injuries, ligament damage, tendon issues, and everything else in between. But before we get into the topic today on what that is, Akos, my brother, how are we?
Yes, my man, I'm amazing, mate. It sounds like you're a sponsor for this amazing thing. I'm ready to buy it. I don't know what it is yet.
Into this right now.
What is it? Let me have it. Why are we waiting for the? They're ready to Google it right now, mate. Look, what is it?
What is this? Hurry up. Hey, let us know, man. We're 2 minutes in and we don't know what the fuck it is.
It's definitely prominent at the moment. Yeah, it really is. So it's a good subject to get into, and I think we're going to talk about it just on where we feel it is right now. And I think it's definitely one we can come back with an expert, definitely for sure, and come back with a bit more research. But I think myself and Dean at the moment have got some viewpoints on it and some thought processes on it. Before you go and click that cash out now or buy now button, I'll leave it to you to introduce it, my man. Let's do it.
Exactly. So, team, the product and anything that we talk about on this podcast, it's not endorsed. It is absolutely not recommended. We don't recommend anything to anybody. You absolutely need to speak to registered professionals, experts, and everything in between. Our job is to inform you, let you know what things are, where they're from, what it's all about, and ultimately give you all the information that you need so that you can go and speak to people or research about it as well. That's exactly what this is all about. And this is something that we wanted to discuss because of how popular it has become in the performance sector, alarmingly popular. And that product or that compound is called BPC 157. Now, what the hell is BPC 157? A lot of you, if you haven't done so already, and you do listen to the ultimate podcaster, Mr. Joe Rogan, and his batshit crazy stuff that some people come out with on there, you will know that the BPC is a synthetic derived product or a protein that people have been injecting into things like ligaments, into fatty deposits in and around the knees, the elbows, the shoulders, because of its healing properties and the ability for it to recover, protect, support, and build new tissue. So you can understand straight away for people that have had, for example, problems with knees, tendon damage, ligament damage. There's actually been some. I haven't seen the research, but I've heard there's research around some Achilles tendon ruptures where they've utilized BPC as a repair process.
But I know BPC, a bit about that. It was in rodents, but I'll talk about that.
And some of the stuff around the body protection compound, which is BPC, that's what it stands for, 157. It's a synthetic peptide. So it's synthetically drawn. It's normally administered with a water-based soluble, so it's mixed together. But it's really important that people understand how it works, because I think what a lot of people think is, it's a steroid, it's this, it's that. No, it's not. But it's important you understand what it does to the body and what it is and how it can affect things. And that's what Akos and I want to do today. We want to bring it up because it's a really interesting topic, because we are hearing so many recreational athletes using it, or recreational everyday athletes using it. And they're doing that above some of the biggest basic pillars that need to be catered for first. And that's the bit that we kind of want to come in at. So, a little bit about how it works. BPC from a muscle perspective. So it can accelerate things like muscle fiber recovery, particularly after like an injury. If you've had, some people have had pec tears, and I've heard people use it with pec tears, and people that have had like torn biceps and whatever else. So from a muscle perspective, that's what it does. With regards to tendons and ligaments, that's another kind of output that comes from taking BPC 157. There is tissue damage there, ligament damage, and it can and has, people have alluded to the fact that it may offer some help and support and protection with that. I've heard some stuff around gut health. I don't know how true that is, and again, this is stuff that we can talk about with some of the experts, particularly around gastrointestinal issues, things around inflammation, etc. And again, in that, we will be bringing in experts to talk about that. We're just bringing up some of the stuff about how it works. And there is even, which I've also brought up, is some nerve tissue sort of positive changes that have been documented again in rodents, particularly with those that have had nerval issues around healing, whatever that might be. So there are some really, really interesting things with the product. But the most alarming thing that I found with it, Akos, is how many people bought it up after Joe Rogan announced it on his podcast. And I think it's a mark of where we are in society at the moment, isn't it? It's that get rich quick, get fit quick schemes, the Ozempic. And again, we can talk about the Ozempic.
Ozempic's going to definitely be soon, mate. I tell you, gosh.
Exactly. And this is the thing that we are worried about, is because as an industry, that's not health promoting. It's not health healing. It's not part of our morals and our principles of coaching. We'd never recommend anybody does this stuff. It's just an awareness about it, because if you've heard of it, the likelihood is you've gone, what's that? I wonder if that should work for me. So it's important, isn't it, that people really understand what the fuck it is.
Unfortunately, we're never going to stop people wanting a magic pill or potion to fix the problems that they've got. So we're never going to stop that. What we can do is obviously the marketing out there. I mean, I don't know if you know anything about Shilajit, but Shilajit's been another one now. Everyone's like, oh, you need to take Shilajit. And I'm like, what are the reasons behind it? They've fallen for the first marketing thing coming out saying that there's 100 million, reasons to take Shilajit. When again, there's limited research on Shilajit. So where is this coming from? So there's people out there that want a magic pill or potion to solve their problems that are, tough problems to deal with, that take time. You get an injury, you say it's annoying, it's frustrating, it can really set your mindset back. So of course, if someone says there's a magic pill or potion to help fix that, of course people are going to be intrigued and want to know more about it and what it can do. Unfortunately, most of the time, you're only going to hear about the good stuff because there's money to be made out of it. And if people have taken it themselves, they're obviously always going to have a sort of positive opinion of it because they're taking it themselves or they used it themselves. So I think our mission is to not try and get anyone to take it or not take it. It's just to give you a bit more information and understanding on it. And where we're at with it, and what our viewpoint is on it. If you agree with that,
that's 100%, mate. And I think that's just the key. It's just an opinion, and that's the main thing. We want to you come into our podcast to listen to us chat shit. So we're gonna talk fucking beards and bells. Yeah, exactly. You're gonna come in. There's probably gonna be an occasion in this podcast where we're gonna talk about fucking rabbits, chocolate, biscuits, and everything in between. So be fucking prepared. Or we could even open up and discuss Akos's and I lovely love for trainers and wall panel walls. So already we're going down fucking rabbit holes that we might not be able to get out of. But yes,
the trainer discussion could go on for about 12 podcasts, mate. We need to be careful.
If anybody watches this on video, I can assure you there is not thousands of pounds worth of trainers behind my head. I promise you they are not there. It is a figment of your imagination.
It's an AI-generated image.
Exactly. I go back to that point that we were just discussing before about, okay, so BPC how it's used, it's how it's been typically administered. So like we said before, it's a water soluble compound, and it's normally injected into, it's a site injection, isn't it? A lot of
Yeah,
people have been using.
yeah.
Now,
As close to the
why
injury as possible.
exactly as close to the injury as possible? And I think one of the big things that you've brought up there, mate, is why so many people that have heard about this from the likes of Joe Rogan, have heard about this from the likes of Andrew Huberman, who've been speaking about it. The fucking worry with this is that when you've got people of authority in such a big position like that, they're just, we are the Wish version. Akos and I are the Wish version of fucking Huberman and Rogan.
Absolutely.
Just a lot fucking cheaper, right? But the point we're bringing up here is that they just brought it up. They brought up the discussion. But the thing that people fail to recognize in those conversations is the nuance. And they don't bring context or nuance to the table. They may have discussed a little bit around the rodent trials, but then that quickly, with the way it's marketed and the way it's created on YouTube and the little shorts that come with it, it makes it sound like this fucking peptide and this compound is the God's gift to every single athlete known to mankind. When in reality, that is not the case. And it's, again, goes back to the point. I know we can talk about a whole nother subject on Ozempic, but it's why so many people in the world right now are looking for such fast term solutions, because it seems to be that so many people in the profession of coaching, in the industry of fitness and health, are trying to find the fastest possible way to get the result for a client or the result for an athlete. And I just don't buy into that mantra personally. I know you don't as well, but I can't speak for you, but I feel like you don't. Like I don't buy into that mantra. If you're a runner, a weightlifter, a tactical athlete, if you are somebody that is a power lifter, just somebody who's an everyday fitness enthusiast, the biggest pillars of health still and must always be the first point of call with everything that you're doing. If you've had an injury, if we think about it from a perspective of load management, 99%, maybe that's an outlandish figure, but 90% of injuries often happen because of poor load management. And that can be from many different aspects. Again, that statistic is definitely not cited anywhere. I've just pulled that out of Dean's arsehole, thrown it into the air, and it's parachuted back down in front of me. So, but in my opinion, 80, we look at different people that come up against us in here. 8, maybe 9 out of 10 injuries could be mitigated if the right load management was applied to most people's training programs, which again is a basic pillar of health, right?
I think if we're talking about in the gym injuries, and like myself and Dean have got like a million injuries that we've been dealing with and we've had over the years, none of mine have been in the gym. None of mine. I've had 4 knee surgeries. I've had a tricep tendon rupture, full rupture. I've had loads. We'll be here all day. But it's not gym related. If it is gym related, it's definitely poor load management for sure.
Yeah.
Then when you talk about sport, it's a completely different gravy chain in terms of injuries. Because when you look at the average NFL career being 18 months, is an average NFL career, you can understand that it's just certain sports are just heavily dominant to getting an injury, and that you're gonna do well to go through a full career in certain sports and not getting injuries. So I agree with you in the sort of gym injuries. I just don't see them. I don't see them with my crew. Small things like like a bit of a hamstring strain, whatever. The 2 previous injuries I've had with my athletes lately, it's been both calf tears, and it's been both women that haven't played sport for a while thinking they could play basketball.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Do you know what? It's funny you say that. It's funny you say that, because it's a similar process that my amazing, beautiful wife has gone through. She had a full grade Achilles rupture. It was a 2.5 centimeter rip gone.
Yeah.
Now
gone.
that she is she won't mind me saying this, she's a beautiful woman. Damn, she's fucking hot. But the point that I'm trying to make here is she's approaching that, and especially as women, we start losing power. Rapidly declines, and our ability to absorb force rapidly declines after the age of 30. If you are not participating in some form of plyometric power stretch shortening cycle type of training. Understand that power's the first thing that's going to go with most people. So we've got to understand that as we're aging, my wife dealt with an Achilles rupture because of poor load management. She went back into basketball a few weeks in and bang, gone. And again, that's not anybody's fault. It's the realities of playing sport. Sometimes they can be missed out. For example, I deal with a lot of guys that have had MSKIs in the past, whether it be MSS and shin splints and shin pain, all the way down to ankle sprains, ankle tears, hamstring ruptures, hamstring tears. And 9 times out of 10, it can sometimes be, a lot of the time it can be avoided because load management is, especially in the military, it's such a hard and fast paced life. There is so much demand. It's the same in professional sport. You might all be bred into the fact that Neymar is currently in is 9 months into his rehabilitation pathway at the moment. And there's loads of people slating and screaming and shouting at these rehab guys online that are just apparently just saying that Neymar's recovery process is really, really shit. But you don't understand the fucking pressures that these rehabilitation coaches have in a high level with one of the world's most expensive football players. Yes, you might have the best answers when it comes to your rehab care and your rehab exercise that you want to give them, but put yourself in their shoes. You're going to deliver something very, very different to what they're delivering. And you've got to understand that these people have a massive contractual obligation to look after. Neymar, who's worth billions and billions of pounds.
Yeah, worth more money than we can fathom.
and literally more than we can fathom. And the point comes back to it, doesn't it? Is that when we talk about load management is one of those key things that we've got to consider. And if you're an everyday athlete, like, for example, Akos and I have played very indifferent. There is not a sport on this planet that I do not think I've not participated in.
Yeah,
that's out there. But everything from football, hockey, rugby, badminton, basketball, volleyball, netball, even cross-country running, sprint, triathlons, Olympic weightlifting, power, you name it, we've done it to some degree.
Yeah.
Injuries will come and will happen on that field. Now, if we're sat here going, NFL players, 18-month career span as an average, that's fucking scary statistic.
Scary.
And again, these are professional sporting athletes. So these professional sporting athletes are going to do anything and everything in their power when something like an injury takes place to get back on the field as quick as they can for 3 reasons. A, the love of the sport. B, their contract, and they want to make sure they're fulfilling their end of the contract. And C, longevity. You've got to understand the sponsorship deals, the money, the financial aspects that come with that.
Yeah, the financials is going to be the key driver.
It's so much, mate, especially when they've got a family to support. So when BPC 157 is a product that's coming out that people are like, oh my God, this compound is a miracle. Andrew Huberman's talking about it. Joe Rogan's talking about it. Where are these trials coming from? Where have they been designed? Who is coming up with these trials? Why is it specifically, why are these clinical trials in humans not out there? Like, I'll do it. I'm an NFL player. I've got an injury. I'll put my hand in there. Let's see how it goes. So when we're hearing about it from a professional perspective, we're seeing that there are loads of professional athletes that are leveraging stuff like BPC 157 because it's not an anabolic steroid. It's not something that many people would allude to as an anabolic steroid.
No.
You know, it's not your clenbuterols, your dianabols, your anavars. It's none of that type of stuff. It's not blood doping. It's not. It doesn't seem to be giving people a clear advantage because it's an injury, tendon tissue repair type of thing going on right here. So when we understand the gravitas of why this might be something people are coming to, I think it's really interesting when we almost apply the concepts of comparison between professional athlete and then the everyday athlete. Because I go back to that point I said to you before, those everyday pillars, if you can fucking hand on heart say that you are looking after sleep, hydration, nutrient quality and nutrient density, you're looking after training load and training volume, you're looking after stress management and all the other health related behaviors that come with being healthy. Then and only then could you say, whatever else could I possibly bloody do to get me fixed here? And that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're thinking that you can maybe not do all that stuff, get an injury, and think BPC 157 is going to bridge your gap. That's going to be crazy. And like you say, accidents happen. Sport is sport. Gym-related stuff definitely can be avoided most of the time. There's going to be people listening to this going, "Oh, I couldn't have avoided this," of course. But most of the time, if we're covering the parameters that we look into, as you know, I measure all those metrics, and I know you do as well. If we're covering our basis, we're going to hedge our bets in the right direction.
Yeah,
and yeah, that's the key thing. And then even if you were to use BPC 157 to recover from an injury, if you're not still covering nutrition for recovery, load management for recovery, depending on what your injury is, like the amount of people that are scared to load an injury is crazy, isn't it?
Well, that's it. You literally, if you're not looking after that stuff, you may as well put your penis out of a window whilst you're driving down a motorway and piss in the wind. Because that's literally what's happening.
Yeah, it's literally that. It's literally that. You're not going to get anything out of it. What is the point? Just cover the bases first, and then obviously it's up to you how far you take the train down the road on your recovery. I think with BPC 157, like you said, it's not a steroid, it's not a specific performance enhancer, but it's also not a medicated, licensed drug. So a lot of people that are listening might not know that.
FDA approved, and I think
it's not FDA approved.
It's not FDA approved, and the potential risks with this peptide, especially with BPC 157, is you have to understand where the trials have taken place with this type of product. So you go on Joe Rogan and listen to the opinions of Andrew Huberman, Joe Rogan, and a few other guys and girls that have heard their friends have got really great results using BPC 157, and their injuries have gone, and they're feeling great, and they feel good. Fantastic. Well, Claire in your fucking local Facebook group could tell you that onions have stopped her shit from stinking. Like,
you're not going to be shoving onions in where the sun don't shine very quickly, are you?
You ain't sticking onions up your fucking sphincter or up your fart pipe. And this is the point we're trying to make here. You know, it's like we've got to understand that none of this stuff, and again, we're going to be talking about we're going to even be talking about pro-anabolic steroids. We're going to be talking about HRT and hormone replacement therapy. Akos and I have got some really, really, really big opinions on the cross relationship between females that go through menopause and their HRT journey, and we've even got things about men that are into their 40s where there is no HRT available. So, like, we've got some great conversations coming up about that.
Yeah,
but just
I've coached so many women that are on HRT, and that you know, I've got literally the real world experience now working with these. That some women are just done with it, want off. Some women are just, you know, starting to think about going on the process of HRT. So there's instead of just looking at the information and the research, you've actually got real world women going through this, going, what's happening with it, like getting both spectrums of what can happen when you go in for an intervention like HRT, or you know, like we say. But I think with the BPC 157, the first thing to understand with everyone, I don't know, I haven't listened to the podcasts of Andrew Huberman or Joe Rogan on BPC 157, so I don't know what they've covered. This is not a direct answer to what they've said or what they might have covered. However, when you look at BPC 157 and where it went into in vitro trials. And in vitro trials is the first stage of trialing, is when you go and look at this peptide under a microscope and what happens at a cellular level. And there was some positive changes to increasing repair of the myofibrils and etc. and all sorts, loads of great stuff. The next stage after in vitro, it's successful, it passes ethics, it goes into rodent trials. That's where it started getting some traction, because one of the rodent trials that I've looked at a group of rodents that had their Achilles completely severed, so they snipped their Achilles clean off. One group of the rodents had the Achilles attached and saw how that's a normal process of an injury. So if we tore our Achilles, we would go and see a surgeon. They would reattach the Achilles of where it's snapped, and then allow the body to do the recovery process. The other group of rodents did not have the Achilles reattached. It was completely severed and allowed to stay severed, but they were administered BPC 157. And they saw a full tendon recovery of the Achilles tendon in the rodents, a full tendon recovery. So it reattached itself and it fully repaired. And I can't remember if it was faster or whatever than the other group. But
I've got
this
a
is where
couple
we
of
get.
studies that have come through.
You got there? Nice.
I've
Yeah.
got a couple
good.
of studies that have come through, yeah, from the animal studies, and like you've just said there, it was two different groups that they were applied to. Some of the other things they looked at with, the mechanisms behind it, the human studies, and what they're looking at with that. So yeah, it's really fucking interesting.
Yeah. So it was interesting. I mean, come on, if you don't need to go to surgery and you don't need to reattach a tendon and you can get it to fully recover, we're bypassing so much of on NHS, you're looking at a year's wait to get that sort of stuff, or like depending on what your injury is.
Yeah.
If it's not an injury that's affecting your work or something like that, you're looking for a long time before you see a surgeon and they get that stuff done. So you're bypassing a lot of the recovery process, which is obviously beneficial. However, big capital H, however, it's not gone from rodent trials any further into human trials. Yeah. And that is the one for me that goes, okay, what's happening here and why hasn't this gone any further? And that is, and I don't know the answer. I don't know why it hasn't gone to human trials and why we haven't got there. But generally,
it's not our job to do that, is it? It's not our job to do that. Our job here is just to let you know about a trend that's happening.
Yeah.
And we want to give you an all-informed net so you know exactly what's going on with it. Like the trials that you're talking about, it's being done on rodents. There is clearly a reason why it's not gone to clinical trials with humans.
There is zero research on BPC 157 administered to human people. There is zero research. And generally, because they can't guarantee the safety of this peptide or drug in humans, therefore they can't pass the ethics, and then they can't get the trial running. They need to pass an ethics board. And the ethics board needs to say, yes, it's ethical. Yep, we're happy for human trials to take place. It's an amazing drug, could do some amazing things. It hasn't got there. Why not? That's the questions you've got to ask yourselves. So when you're buying BPC 157, you're buying underground labs or places that make it that aren't. It's not FDA approved, and it's not from a medical company. It's not from Pfizer. It's not from GlaxoSmithKline. It's not from these people.
That's the key, isn't it? I think people need to be aware that, and again, it's fucking Jesus Christ. Like, there are so many conspiracies around the COVID vaccine. You know, the COVID vaccine was rushed through clinical trials, was rushed through the process of being put onto the market because there was a massive, massive demand, which we have now been led to believe. And a lot of research is showing that actually the COVID vaccines didn't provide the necessary protection that it was supposed to. So it's interesting because just because it hasn't gone through to human trials, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a no-go. What it does mean is it means there is more that needs to be done with the current body of research that they have, more that needs to be done with the current compound that they're getting, the peptide, the molecules itself, what it is as a BPC product. And then they can start going through this journey, this process. So it's really important to understand the research route that things take place through. It takes so much to get things ethically approved. It takes a lot to get research into a place. But what's really interesting is on Joe, and I've got some notes here that I've got from Joe Rogan's podcast. So Joe Rogan actually shared quite a lot about his experience with BPC 157 and called it like the powerful healing tool or drug or whatever he called it.
Yeah.
And
of course you want to buy
it. Exactly. Well, when he's labeling it the Wolverine Peptide.
Wow.
Like anybody that hears Wolverine Peptide, they're like, wait, I can grow like fucking I can grow like those titanium claws out of my fucking fist. Imagine bringing in that into the gym. You're bench pressing, some fucking twat tries to steal your plates. Like, mate, you touch my plates, I'm going to cut your throat, motherfucker. But Joe Rogan shared his experience with it quite openly. Wolverine Peptide, it was called. And again, a lot comes back into what we were talking about with anecdotal experiences that he had with people that he was training with, because he's got a big network of people that he trains with.
Yeah.
Andrew Huberman took a completely different approach with this. So I think it's important to acknowledge that, in that the cautious approach that he took around the conversation was bringing up the animal studies that you've alluded to, the angiogenesis process, the healing process, formation of blood vessels and all that you saw in those clinical trials with the rats and the rodents that had a fully detached tendon, on what happened with the two different groups. So he brought that up. And there is, again, go back to the point. It's not just a lack of human data. There is no solid human data on this.
No human data.
No solid human data on this at all.
I mean, we've got loads of empirical human data of loads of strong men and loads, and we've got loads of people, but we can't use that as
exactly.
As a
we've got a
measure
lot of anecdotal data as well. You know what I mean? From people that we speak to, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it really, really works." And we're like, "Oh, really? Oh, interesting."
Yeah.
So. But again, opinions are like arseholes. Everybody's got one. The point being is that we can't take Claire's advice about putting an onion up her bum because it stops the smell of her shit, because that just doesn't happen. But what is interesting is that actually on the podcast, when they brought it up, they spoke about how cautious people need to be around the topic of taking it. But when marketed, it wasn't put across that way. The same can then be applied to the Ozempic drug. Everybody heard about Ozempic, the fat loss pill, the fat loss diet, or the fat loss injection. Yet what people fail to recognize is the pre-qualification route that people need to take to get that. You can't just go to the doctors down. You can't just go to Dr. Singh's bloody local GP and say, "Doctor, I'd like to take the Ozempic drug because I feel a bit fat this week." That's not how it works. There are so many prerequisite things that have to be matched with people for people to go and do that type of thing. But it's interesting because marketing plays such a big part, doesn't it, in how we view any product that comes onto the industry. I mean, dude, I remember when I first started in the industry, so people were talking about creatine, and people thought fucking creatine was a fucking pro-anabolic.
Yeah, exactly. And again,
creatine even had the same issue about getting human clinical trials to test certain dosages.
Absolutely. But I think we're just, as human beings, we're looking for that magic pill, like we said, and we're not really looking for, okay, but what are the side effects? What are the complications? We just want the answer. We want the answer. We want that. All right, what can it do? Show me, talk to me. And the amount of people that will risk their health not knowing what they're taking. Example with the Ozempic. Now, I don't know about Ozempic, but I definitely know about Mounjaro, and I'm pretty sure Ozempic and Wegovy are going to be the same. They've got a little black triangle next to them. Okay, don't know if you've ever noticed. Have a look. The little black triangle that's pointing down. Now, the little black triangle that's pointing down next to a medication means they cannot guarantee the safety of that drug, and they do not know the long-term effects of that drug. They have to put that next to their drug, a little black triangle pointing down, saying, "We don't know what's going to happen. We don't have a clue. It's only been, human trials have shown this. It's only been a certain amount of time. We've seen this. We've seen that. We cannot guarantee the safety of this drug." And they have to put a little black triangle on it.
Watch how many people pull aspirin and ibuprofen out of their purse now and go, "The triangle's upside down."
They're going to be looking at that little black triangle. It's going to haunt people now. You watch. It's amazing. People don't know the effects of Wegovy, Mounjaro, Ozempic. They don't even really, sometimes don't want to care. They don't care. They say, right, what can it do? What can it fix? And then actually it doesn't really fix much. When we talk about that, that's going to be a good one. It's going to be a really good. But again, it's like, when we're talking about BPC 157, I don't think enough people are talking about why hasn't it gone to human trials? Why aren't big conglomerate multinational companies that could make a lot of money out of this drug, why are they not jumping on it? Why are they not invested into human trials? Why hasn't it gone any further? Now, I haven't got the answer. I'm not saying it does this or it does that, and it causes this and it causes that. But there's definitely a reason why it's not gone any further. And that's massively a consideration for taking anything for me is like, okay, it says it can do that. It's shown it can do this, but what am I playing with when I take this? What am I
Yeah.
playing with? What am I possibly looking at? The gastrointestinal issues of Wegovy and possible increase in pancreatic cancer, all coming up now. Just not stuff that we've not heard about yet. So we're still,
And
very, very early. It will start.
particularly with our morals and our ethics of coaching, like we would never, ever, ever, ever. We don't even recommend people take creatine unless we know who they are and what they are. Like
Yeah.
we want everybody to take creatine. Of course we do, because it's such a great product. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it is befitting of that individual and where they're at. They may have some kidney issues. They may have some digestive problems. They may have other things that we need to understand. It would be exactly the same as anybody recommending, or Akos and I recommending somebody to take vitamin D with K, to take a multivitamin. It's the same premise, is that it's everything that should be delivered in the coaching sector and the fitness space has to be done with context, has to be done with morals and ethics behind it. And we cannot, under any circumstances, sit here and say we know enough about this for you to go out and start doing it. We would definitely never recommend it, even if, like creatine is, without question, one of the most researched supplements on the market. It is so heavily researched, so many positive effects. We're even seeing a lot around cognitive performance as well with it.
Massively.
And if we're speaking to clients, and there is, for most of our athletes, there is a need for these guys to take creatine because of how good it is, and it's so readily available. For 90% of our guys and girls, we would recommend it, but that's because there are morals and ethics behind what we're doing, and we're not just telling people to go and do it. We're understanding the research first. And this is what we're coming up with here, is that we're seeing the trend. We're seeing a lot of people talk about it. We're seeing a lot of athletes bring it up, have it been highlighted a couple of times now on a Joe Rogan podcast, a couple of times with interventions that people are using on the likes of Andrew Huberman's podcast, what they're doing to stay injury free, etc. It's really important that you're not blinded by this information and you're not swallowed into a funnel of potentially life-altering change. And that's the main thing for us, which is why we bring this podcast to you, to talk about products, supplements, and things of this nature. And I think Akos and I have pretty much delivered every single
balloon every now and again as well.
We want to pop exactly. We want to fucking pop the balloon. But the bottom line with this is that your absolute, without question, main focus, if we were to say to anybody, Akos, and I think you agree here, if we're working with anybody, we've got to get all of our ducks in a row. We've got to understand training and load management. We've got to understand nutritional quality and density. We have to focus on quality of sleep, not just the time, the quality of sleep. Tick all the boxes there. We've got to understand stress management. We've got to understand lifestyle stuff, implications with family, relatives, relationships. All of that shit plays its part on your health. If that stuff isn't catered for, no amount of creatine, protein, vitamin D with K, no amount of shit is going to be an insurance policy for your health. So it's really important you understand that. But any parting thoughts, Akos, before we round out today's episode on BPC 157?
There is something I would bring up on BPC 157. It could be another thing that people think about before they go, okay, there's this Wolverine drug, I can be unstoppable and recover from my injuries and whatever. The other thing is the quality of the product that you're getting, and guaranteeing the quality of the product that you're getting. Obviously, it's not FDA approved. It's not coming out of pharmaceutical labs. It's coming from underground labs or whoever's making this stuff. I don't actually know. However, of what I know about how they build BPC 157 and how it works, it is a chain of amino acids in a specific formula, in a specific row, that has to be in this row for it to bind and for it to be usable. Okay, so simple terms, these amino acids need to be stacked. When they're binding these amino acids, there's a high probability of one of these amino acids dropping out. So what they need to do to guarantee that this substance works is every time they add an amino acid, they need to check it's been binded, and they need to check the chain, which is a long exhaustive process of making sure that product, every chain of these amino acids, has binded and is in a row. If one drops out, it's not what you're getting. You're just getting some baby powder in mixed with water.
And that's the same for every single batch as well. Not just
Every single batch.
And that's why it takes so long.
So it takes so long to test that. So unfortunately, the reality that we have is these underground labs aren't doing this. They're not, the places you can buy this stuff, they're not testing the formula and making sure that the binding process has taken. So they're just hoping that nothing has fallen out. Okay. Then that obviously makes it cheaper to make and quicker to use. So you can get, this substance for, the price of a tub of protein, not a lot of money. The real stuff with the process of testing every single amino acid profile and make sure it's binded would cost you more than what it's worth. It would cost you 10 times, if not 20 times, what you would normally get a vial from. So now we're talking about, what are we actually getting? Are we really getting it, or is it the placebo effects? And we know about the power of a placebo, because there's universities in America that just test the power of placebo, and it is amazing stuff. If you get the benefit from a placebo and you think you're taking it and you're getting better, well, then who am I to stop that? If you're still getting that benefit, the body actually responds to the fact that you think you're taking this wonder drug. That's something to talk about as well.
Yeah.
But with BPC 157, what are you getting? What's in that little vial that you mix with water? That is the biggest question. That's probably where I'd finish my understanding of where BPC 157 is, mate. What are your thoughts on that?
Perfect. I think you've summed it up quite nicely, mate. I think people need to be very cautious. Don't get blinded by them. And again, it comes back to that marketing, doesn't it? Don't get blinded by the marketing, because the marketing can be very good at making something look like it's not. And that's the key. Like, the marketing is designed to be good marketing, because somebody in that chain is getting a little bit of money and a little bit of chuck back from something which doesn't have clinical research and clinical trials backed behind it, that we can categorically say it sits in the same bracket as something like creatine, which is the biggest premise here. Exactly. So, team, without further ado, we just want to take this opportunity to say thank you for joining us on today's podcast. We hope you found this useful. We hope you were able to take something away from it. As always, Akos and I would absolutely love anybody to share any feedback with us on anything that you've listened to today, or any of the other podcasts that we're doing. Please, where you can, if you can, give us a review. Let us know what you think about the podcast. Google reviews, podcast reviews, iTunes, Spotify. They help the podcast bump up so other people can see what we're putting out there. It's a massive, 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 massive ask from us for you to do that and take your time. But we just want to say we massively appreciate anybody that goes to any length to share this podcast on their Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn stories, whatever you guys are doing. It really does mean the absolute fucking world to us, because this is something that we love doing. It's why we've brought it back. We had this conversation a little over a few weeks ago where we were just like, I just miss talking about fucking things in health and fitness. And now more than ever, the internet used to be an escape from reality. But right now, for me, having real conversations has become the escape from the internet that I need, and that Akos needs, and that everybody else needs. And we want you to be involved in this conversation. We want this to be the escape. We want this to be the escape on your walk. This to be the escape from you doom scrolling, death scrolling on Instagram. We want this to be the place where you can come in and listen to two voices and more voices that are hopefully helping you build a bigger, better, brighter future for yourself, whether that be in health, strength, movement, mindset, nutrition, performance, whatever it is. So from the bottom of my heart, and I absolutely know the same could be emulated from Akos, we fucking appreciate anybody that listens to our podcast, listens to what we're about. The new era has begun, and we look forward to speaking to you all in the next episode. Stay tuned. And much love from the Art of Performance team. Peace out, team.
Peace out.